Hello everybody, Mr. McCabe here, and today we're going to talk about the Roman Catholic Church, particularly the power it had in Europe during the Middle Ages. Alright, so once we saw Charlemagne as being the Holy Roman Emperor, I know, this seems like forever, right? It's been almost a month since we talked about Charlemagne. But, since Charlemagne, other rulers haven't had as great a relationship with the Catholic Church as he used to have. In fact, we actually see something called the Two Swords analogy take place. The idea that there are really two different worlds and two different hierarchies that exist in Europe during this time. Europe had its feudal society that we're kind of aware of at this point. We had kings and then lords and then knights and people and everything like that. And the Catholic Church had the same thing. At the top you had Pope, then you had cardinals, bishops, priests, deacons, and laity. And these people are all what we consider part of the clergy. Clergy being the people who actually facilitate the religion itself. So we had two swords. One sword was the political world, and one sword was the religious world. And it worked under rulers like Charlemagne. But it doesn't work under a lot of other ones. These two swords will clash. And the question becomes, who is going to be the dominant power in Europe during the Middle Ages? So, let's see how this all plays out. Well, for the average person, church life was pretty much everything. It is introduced during this time period something that we call canon law, which are the foundational beliefs of the Catholic Church, and established what rules there were for sacraments, between people, the relationships, marriage, father, son, all that stuff. And they also introduced courts to really provide justice for the area, since kings oftentimes didn't have that for themselves. And in those courts, you had various different punishments. The worst punishment the church itself could toss out there was excommunication. That is effectively banning your soul from ever reaching heaven. It was an incredibly powerful tool, one we've already talked about in the past. And just like there's excommunication in the church, the political world will introduce something very similar as well, and we call it the interdict. This is effectively preventing anyone from ever interacting with those who are excommunicated, eliminating them from society entirely. So this is huge. What the church doesn't explain or doesn't deal with is that in Europe we also see the rise of superstition. Anything that the church could not explain, or anything that science in its very early forms could not explain, people use superstition to justify. If a person got sick and you couldn't figure out why, they might have been cursed by a witch. Or if there was this area that people constantly died at, maybe there's a troll there, or some other situation that took place. Magical spells were placed on people, people were, possessed, and this is, it's how people dealt with the unexplained. And superstition starts playing this huge role in the lives of most people in Europe during this period. And this is going to lead to a problem. Superstition inherently does that. So, what kind of problems? Well, we have a person in Otto the First of the Holy Roman Empire who's going to try to be like Charlemagne. And with the church generally having pretty much control over everything at this point in time, rulers realize that they need to become friends with the Pope if they're ever going to become a major player in Western Europe. So Otto the First is going to do that. He actually becomes allied with the Pope and maneuvers himself to control all of the German states, creating a brand new Holy Roman Empire. And he is crowned emperor just like Charlemagne is crowned emperor by the Pope. And things are great. This is his Holy Roman Empire. This Holy Roman Empire is what we would consider today Germany, huge chunks of Austria, huge chunks of areas like Croatia, huge areas of Italy. It's an impressive territory that he had taken. But there's always problems. So while Otto was willing to kind of bow to the will of the Pope when need be in order to get his throne and get the rights that he wanted, he also didn't want to give total control of his empire over to the church. So a new policy is kind of established during this period called lay investiture. And it's the idea that political leaders can appoint church officials. So if you can't appoint the Pope yourself, what you can do is appoint the actual people who are carrying out the church's mission in your country. And this is huge because those people then become indebted to you. Are you going to be loyal to the king who gave you your job or to a pope who's in a country far away? And while the ideal situation is that you're loyal to the pope, in many cases it wasn't. Rome doesn't like this because they know that it's giving away a lot of power to kings. But people like Otto are going to double down on this notion to establish control over the church in their realms. And when a pope bans lay investiture in 1075, Pope Gregory II, this is not going to make things great for European leaders and particularly how they deal with the pope. And now there are battle lines there. The question is going to become, who's the dominant power? Is it going to be a pope or is it going to be a king? And this is going to be a problem that's not going to go away very quickly. So let's see stage one of this fight. It will be with Henry IV of the Holy Roman Empire. He is inspired by Otto I, his ancestor, so he wants to reinstitute the policy of lay investiture. And he does it. Except that the Pope, at the time, Pope Gregory, is like, no, you can't. So what he does, Henry is really clever here, and by clever I mean extraordinarily stupid. He tries to get the bishops that he appoints to go to the papacy and force Gregory to resign as Pope. He's trying to get them to remove the Pope from control. You can probably figure out how well this turns out. It isn't going to work. I don't know if you can hear this clip or not, but it's no, 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 not no, no, no chance. Never going to happen, not going to happen. Yeah, you get the point. And it gets him excommunicated. Gregory does not like this attempt to kind of topple his control, and it gets to the point, and this is where it gets real funny, that Henry can't control his lands if he's excommunicated because his people can't obey someone who isn't part of the Catholic Church. So Henry will travel to a town called Canossa where he knew Gregory was, and Gregory is going to force Henry to sit outside waiting for 3 days in the cold before Gregory will have him inside to have him hear his side of the story and accept his apology. Freaking hysterical. A king is forced to kneel at the hands of the Pope because he doubled down in what he thought was enough power and he didn't have it, and it blew up in his face. And that leads us to what we call the Concordat of Worms. So after Canossa, emperors try to wrestle back again over this whole idea of lay investiture, but an agreement would be made at Worms. The church will appoint bishops and cardinals and various other church leaders, but an emperor can veto the appointment. So they can't nominate people that they want, but they can choose to prevent people they don't want from coming to leadership roles in the church. And this seems to make everyone happy for a while. But this whole church versus kings thing is not going to go away. There's still more to be played out here. As Willy Wonka says, wrong, wrong, you get nothing. So we're going to have a big situation coming up soon when it comes to a guy by the name of Frederick. And Frederick's going to be a major player here. So let me introduce something else to this story. During the Middle Ages, German kings were selected by a group of 7 princes. These princes are called the electors. The electors had to agree upon a person for that person to become king. And if they couldn't agree upon someone, Germany just didn't have a king. So in 1152, the 7 princes agree that they need a leader, and they will choose a guy by the name of Frederick for the job. And his name is Frederick Barbarossa. We've actually briefly talked about Frederick Barbarossa in the past. He is really the first and only person to call German lands the Holy Roman Empire. Now you might be saying, hey, wait, there's been Holy Roman Empires in the past. Like, what are you talking about? Well, those areas were kind of a mix between French and German lands. These are just exclusively German lands. And during one of the Great Crusades, he is actually going to be one of the kings who goes on crusade. And he, along with Richard II and the French King Louis, will travel to the Holy Land, except that if you remember, Louis doubles back and attacks England, and Barbarossa, drowns on the way. But this is going to be key because this creation of this Holy Roman Empire as dictated by Barbarossa is going to be now the precedent. All of these lands are part of a unique group led by princes who will bow to the will of an emperor when they see the need to do so. And it worked. Barbarossa unites the people together, and the Germans are unified for the first time really ever. And it's a huge moment in German history. And things are progressing. In fact, he'll even try to expand into Italy. Unfortunately, it doesn't go all that well because he did not take into account the wonderful invention of the crossbow with many of its soldiers, and they die. But didn't tarnish his record at all, really. He's the man who unites everyone. What does tarnish his record is how he died during the crusade by drowning. Because, yeah, that happened. And unfortunately, after Barbarossa, his Holy Roman Empire will be broken, and it will not actually reconnect into one entity until 1860s. And the efforts by a guy named Otto von Bismarck. So it's going to be another 700 years before Germany reunites together. Alright, and that's what we have for today, folks, and I will talk to you guys later. Have